Hello and welcome back to another Farming Simulator Giants editor tutorial, and I'm back on Thorton farm here today. No particular reason, just a map I'm sort of playing around with at the moment. Really good map, and it was one that I just happened to have available to have a bit of a play around with. Specifically in this particular case, I want to talk about the water mod. This particular map does actually have the water mod already on it. So you can see here we've got our trough, which is part of the actual water mod itself. So for those that don't know, haven't used it, you come around here with a, I would probably say, Coty universal trailer, and you tip in your water. I don't know if it uses the in-game water tanker or water bowser or whatever. I can't remember, because I generally tend to use the Cote universal ones these days for pretty much all of that sort of thing. But yeah, this is the basic setup that you get with water mod. Very good mod, does exactly what it says on the tin sort of thing. But in some particular cases, a little unrealistic. You come over and you basically hit a trigger box and then this fills up with water. So yeah, like I said, it does work, it does exactly what it says, but I wanted to have a look around and see if there was something else. Or actually, I was just playing around on some different mod sites, and I came across something that looks perhaps maybe a little bit more realistic. You decide whether that's the case or not. But yeah, this I'm going to replace, and I'm going to put something else here which has got some, I don't know what you want to call them really, sort of spouts or whatever, some little nozzles which actually spray the water into the particular trough. Now I believe you can actually use the standard tip trigger for the Cote Universal or whatever else, possibly the in-game water bowser, to put the water into the trough if you so choose to do so. But the actual trough itself comes with a attach point, so that if you're using the Cote Universal tankers, I don't know if any others will do the same because I don't use anything else, but you basically attach your pipe on the end and then the water comes out of the little sprayers and it fills up. I think it looks somewhat more realistic, or has a better sort of feature for the map. So I wanted to change this and put it into this particular map, just for my own sort of purposes, and I figured why not make a video and show you guys what exactly I'm talking about. So I've gone to the Marhu site, and you can see here we have the water mod version 3.4.0. It is in German. I tend to use Google Translate to just put it into English so I can understand what it's actually saying and all the rest of it. So you can see here, for those that don't know, it has to be installed by a GE, Giants Editor. It is available for cows, sheep and chickens, and it then gives you the ability to give an extra 10% on your productivity. It shows up in your in-game pages, and then will actually allow you to see what water you are, the amount of water you've given, and I believe it also shows for certain animals what is actually required in the PDA mod. I don't think it does that in the in-game menu, but if you have the PDA mod, it will actually show you the amount of water that you've put in, plus the amount of water that it will take for the appropriate animals that you have. So the more animals you buy, that number will then obviously go up because they require more. But yeah, so that's that particular mod, and like I said, does exactly what it says on the tin. But I found this one while I was messing around on different sites, and I will just translate that to English as well, why not? And it's called cattle troughs, and it basically says at the top here that it gives a little bit extra. So using the same water mod from Marhu, and if I just do that, you can see here that it has the Cote Universal tanker, and the pipe comes out, attaches to the end of the trough, and then it has the little water sprayer nozzles and fills up the tank. So that's pretty much it. And there's another version of it there, which is the smaller version you can use potentially for your sheep, and the previous version would be for your cows, because there's the milk robot. Now it doesn't say anything about chickens, but I don't see why you wouldn't be able to use the the one there for sheep. I'm not entirely sure on that, but I'm not particularly bothered about the chickens, if I'm absolutely honest. The cows and the sheep are the ones that I'm going to probably concentrate on. I may just show you how to do the one for cows, and then you leave it on you whether you want to mess around with the one for the sheep the process will be more than likely exactly the same. But that's the actual mods itself, and I will put a link in the description if I remember to do so on both the water mod itself and the trough. So I've already obviously downloaded these, so what I will do here is actually go back to my desktop here, and you can see we've got the original water mod here, and it shows you chicken, wheat, and then sheep. I don't know what fass is, but I will open these up to show you what I mean. So we have chicken water, and if I open that in Giants Editor here, you can see here we have the little wooden sort of setup, which you can actually see on the Thorton farm map, which is over here. So you have the one for wheat, and then you have the one for the water there, and that's what it's showing you in that one. So that's the one for water, because obviously it says there fill types water. So if I close that one down, then we have the chicken wheat. So if I open that one up and then come into that one, exactly the same setup with the wooden type trough, and it says over in the fill type wheat. So that's that one for the chickens. Then you have the cows, which we've already shown, or I've already shown you on the actual Thorton farm map, and that's what you would normally see. That's what you get, and that's pretty much standard for most mods I've ever played on. Mod maps that I've ever played on that have the water mod installed. So that's that one. Then fass, I don't know what that is, we'll see. Oh, that's some sort of tanker, I guess, that is available to use for the actual... Oh, I see, it's a different type of trough. I haven't seen this one before. Interesting. What does that actually... So it is water. Don't know. That's something I've not come across before, if I'm honest. But not one I'm going to be playing around with. I don't know. That might be interesting to have a look at, and perhaps maybe do another video later on. But for now, I'm not going to be looking at that one. And then we obviously have our sheep, which is the smaller, slightly smaller trough, which I can show you on Thornton Farm here, over in the field somewhere over here. There we go. So that would be that one there. So that's the standard water troughs for the actual water mod itself. So what I'm going to do here is actually import the new version, which is the one with the nozzles, and then show you how we go about doing that. Now, this particular map, as I say, has already got the water mod installed on it. So when you are going to do this, or if you're going to do this on a map that doesn't have the water mod installed, you will need to copy over the watermod.lua script and then set up your mod desk to point the path file name to that particular mod. So if I come over to my Thornton farm map here and I go into maps and then go into scripts, you can see that we have not in that folder. So if I go into the mod desk, and I will then try and locate it. So if I go into the mod desk here, you can see we have, if I can find it in here, water mod. So it actually is on this particular map in map models objects water mod script. So if I go into that particular folder, just so I can show you what I mean. So map models, and then it was in water mod, map models objects. So objects, then water mod script, and then the script is in there. So this particular map already does have it on it, as you can see there. So if you were working with a map, creating a map for the first time, whatever, didn't have the water mod on it, then this is what you would need to copy over to the map that you're editing or creating, and then set your path file name to the appropriate folder that you have put the script into. So that's pretty much that. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to close that down, because I don't actually need to make any changes to my mod desk at all. And I'm going to close that down because I don't need that one. I just wanted to briefly show you the standard water mod there and the troughs that are appropriate to that particular mod. Then what I'm going to do is actually copy this particular folder, which is the new water troughs with the spouts, or whatever you want to call those, and then try and show you how to set that up. So I'm going to go into my Thornton farm map here. Now I've already made some changes to this particular map, so I've put a folder in called imported. So what I'm going to do is open that up, and then I'm going to copy that folder over into there like so. And I can close that one down, no longer require that. So I can go back into the Thornton farm map, on in the Giants Editor session here. And what I need to do here, this one is obviously for cows. So if I go into the cinnagraph here, just bring that down a little bit. Go into the cinnagraph here and we've got the cow husbandry. So if I open that up, we've got our tip triggers. And obviously it will highlight that and any other tip triggers that are appropriate for our cows. So fantastic. And my dog is now making some noise in the background. I do apologise. So if I open that up, if we go into here, we have this I don't know how you pronounce that, but that is basically the actual water trough there. So what I'm going to do is replace that. If I open that up, it shows you whatever you've got in there and the bits and pieces that will be appropriate to obviously hit the triggers and put the water in. So what I want to do here is go into File and then Import, and I'm going to go back to my desktop, make sure I'm in the right folder here. Go Map, Models, Imported. Then I'm going to go into this one here, the whatever that is, and I've got the two different troughs. I believe it's this one for the cows, but we'll see when I double click it and import it. So I'm just going to double click that, import it into the map. So now what I want to do is I want to bring it over just to make sure I have got the right one. So I'm going to go Edit, Interactive Placement, and yes, it is the right one, so fantastic. So I can put it back where it was before by clicking the Undo Translation arrow there, because what I want to do here is cut this with Control X, and I'm going to go back into my cow husbandry in the triggers, the tip triggers, and I'm going to click on the tip triggers transform group there, and then I'm going to go Control V to paste it in, like so. Now what I want to do is align it to the same place that this particular trough is located. Now I have specifically copied it into that particular transform group, because if I go back into the original one, I've got my Translate XYZ attributes in the attributes window over here on the right hand side, and if I use those particular attributes, I can then put those attributes into this new water trough, and it will take the place of this one, or it will copy those particular XYZ positions. If I was to leave it at the bottom of the cinnagraph, that would not work. It needs to be in this particular transform group to accept those attributes, at least in my experience anyway. If you experience something different, that's fine, but for me that's what I needed to do to get it to, or I need to do to get it to put it in this particular position. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to highlight the original one, and I'm just going to copy these over. I know there is a way to do these by copying them all in one lump, but I want to do it so that I can actually see it shifting into position as I do each individual one. So I'm going to copy the first one and just make sure that I did actually copy it, yes. And then I'm going to come over to the one that I'm going to be replacing it with, go into the Translate X and paste it in, tab across to accept the change. Then we go back over to the original one, copy that one in, go back to this one, and then paste it into the Translate Y and tab across. And I'm going to go back into the original one, copy this one, and then paste that into there like so. And we can see it's now brought it over, and I need to now move it round to the appropriate position with the rotate Y. So I'm going to copy that one over as well, like so, bring that into the new trough, put it into rotate Y, and it will bring it round like so. And now that is basically in exactly the same position as the original water mod trough was placed on the map. So for me that works best, I believe. And you can see now, if I go back to the original one and hit delete on my keyboard, the original one is now gone, and I have this one replacing it, and you can see the water nozzles there like so. Fantastic. So what I'm going to do now is I'm just going to double check that the actual fill plane here, the water fill plane, is correct for this particular map. It should be, but I just want to double check that. And the way I'm going to do that is highlight the original, or sorry, the new trough that I've brought in. And if I go down to my user attributes here, and if you don't have this window open, just go up to your taskbar, window, and then user attributes, and that window will come up. So if I come down now into my user attributes, I have got this move max Y and move min Y. So what I'm going to do is click on the plus next to the water trough here, and we've got our wazer, whatever you pronounce that. That is actually the actual water plane itself. So what I'm going to do is, with the whole mod selected in the user attributes, I'm going to go to the move max y, and I'm going to copy that, go back into the wazer cube here, and in translate y I'm going to paste that in, and you can see that that now brings that up to the highest point that the water fill plane will show up in game, which is appropriate. That's perfectly fine, don't need to change that at all. So if I go back into the actual main water mod, the water trough itself, I'm going to go move min y and copy that, and then go back to the wazer water, I'm going to just call it water, the water fill plane, and paste that into translate y. You can see it's now gone down to the minimum, which is perfectly fine as well, just showing, poking through on the trough itself, which is exactly where I want it to be. So I don't need to make any changes to that move min y section there at all, and all the rest of it will be appropriate for the cow husbandry as it's set up. I don't need to make any changes there at all. And if I come down to on create, you can see mod on create water mod, so it shows you there that that is the actual script that it will require, as I explained earlier on. If you haven't got that because you are creating a map for the first time, or a map, not necessarily for the first time, but you're creating a map, or you're editing a map that doesn't have the water mod on it already, that is the mod that you will need to copy over, as I said before, and then create the path file name in the mod desk to point it to that particular mod script. So now that I've got all that placed into there, and I'm quite happy with that, I need to move on to a couple of other parts, because the original trough that was here didn't require any particle animations or particle systems, because you just basically put the water and it would look like it was going on the floor in most cases, but then you were in a particular trigger, so the fill plane would then obviously come up. But in this particular case, because I've got these little nozzles or whatever, and it does spray water, as you saw in the pictures I showed you earlier on the Marhu site, I need to point these particular nozzles to the i3D for the particle effect to show up correctly. So what I'm going to do here is now scroll down to this transform group here called PS, and if I open that, we've got what's called water side, and that is for the nozzles themselves, the actual part of the nozzle which will be the output for the water. And if I come into my user attributes again, here we've got a file name and a path file name pointing towards that particular i3D, as you can see there. So I need to change that that path file name to locate the i3D that I've set up on the Thorton farm map here. So I've got map models imported, and then the actual Tranken, whatever that is, and then in there you'll have a folder called PS and the side ps3.i3d, which is what I need to point that path file name towards. So I'm just going to grab my Giants editor session here, bring it down a little bit so I can actually see that path file name behind it, and in here I've got map models, and then I've got objects, so I don't need that, so I'm just going to delete it, and then I'm going to type in there imported, like so, and then I'll just double check the rest of it. We have a capital V, so you need to make sure that you actually have a capital V in your folder structure, because capitals, it is somewhat case sensitive in this path file name. If you don't copy the capitals across, so uppercase and lowercase, you will get a case invalid error in the console. Older version of Giants Editor will show up in the script box down the bottom here, but the information is exactly the same. So just make sure that you are actually copying over the path file name exactly as it's laid out in the folder structure, with uppercase and lowercase letters respectively. So that's perfectly fine, don't need to make any changes there. Then I've got PS and the actual i3D itself, so that's perfectly fine, don't need to make any changes there. So what I'm going to do now is just basically highlight the entire path file name in that path file name in that box there, copy it, then I'm going to click on the rest of them, do the same, and then paste it over, so that I know I've got the entire path file name in that box pointing in the right place to get my i3D and the particle system that I require for these particular nozzles. Okay, so now that I've done that, that's perfectly fine. Now, the last thing I need to do here is the sound, so that when you actually dump the water in here, you get the empty sound come through for those particular nozzles. It's a pretty standard sound, which I will then play in game. I won't do it in the Giants editor here because I need to mess around with the volume settings and whatever else, then exit out of Giants editor, reload Giants editor to actually have the appropriate change in sound. So I won't do that, but you will get what I mean once we get it into game in a bit. So I'm just going to click on the plus next to the sound transform group, and we have our audio source. If I click on that and come over to my attributes on the right hand side here, you cannot actually change this, but it is worth just double checking that the sound file name has been allocated correctly. It should be, but I just want to double check. So I'm just going to bring that up and maximize it again. So we've got C, My Documents, Desktop, Thorton Farm, Map, Models, Imported, Viatranken, Sound, Sprayer.wav. So if I go back into my folder, Thornton Farm, Map, Models, Imported, Viatranken, PS. So we need to come back and we've got Sound and then the sprayer WAV. So that path file name is perfectly okay. Like I said, you can't change it in Giants Editor, and it should automatically create it for you once you've imported the actual trough into the map, but it is worth just having a look and double checking it is okay. Okay, so I just will show you this briefly. You've got your range and inner range. Now, as I've said before in previous videos, I'm going to take this as 100 meters and 30 meters. 100 meters would be if you're outside of a vehicle, I believe. 30 meters would be if you're inside a vehicle. So at 100 meters away, you will still be able to hear the sound, but any further away from 100 meters, you will then not be able to hear it. Inside a vehicle, you'll be able to hear the sound up to 30 meters away, but after 30 meters, you will no longer be able to hear it. That is a guess on my part, but I'm going to say that's probably more than likely right. The volume there is set to 1, so that will be 100% if you like. It will be affected by your in-game sound options. If you're messing around with sounds in Giants Editor, I probably would suggest that you change that volume setting down to something like 0.1, but you would then need to exit out of Giants Editor, reload the Giants Editor session for that change to take effect. There are some tabs up here which are for reload all textures and reload textures, but in my experience they've never worked, and they are texture related and not sound related. So if I was to change this to 0.1 now and lower that volume setting, to actually make that setting take effect, I would need to save the Giants Editor session, exit the Giants Editor session, and then reopen it again for that change to take effect. I'm not going to do that. I'm just going to show you what the sound is like when we actually get it into game. I think that would be more appropriate than messing around with sound volumes within the game itself. And I'm not even sure that the sound would come through anyway, because I'm unable to actually operate this in game, and I'm not going to even just try it. So we'll see what that sounds like once I'm in game, like I say. Okay, so that's perfectly fine. That's all set up. We've got our particle systems all set up. Our fill plane is perfectly fine. We've got that, check that, and that's all set up. Tip triggers will be fine because they're all set up okay. So that's pretty much it. It's a relatively straightforward trough to import. Like I said, the water mod from Marhu has done the most of the actual work there, the actual script itself. But kudos to the person who actually went ahead and created this to make it a little bit, in my opinion, somewhat more realistic. And I feel it's going to, well, yeah, be a good addition to Thorton Farm or any particular map that you happen to be creating or editing. So I just wanted to bring it to your attention to show you that, and use it, don't use it, whatever. Okay, so I'm going to save this now and zip it all up, put it into game, and then I will see you in game. Now, I have actually given my cows some water in the past while playing on this map, so they have actually got some already. I'm not entirely sure that it will affect what they've already got. It shouldn't do, but it may do. By changing the trough, you may find that it will actually remove what water you've given them already, so you would then obviously have to give them more, but we'll check that once we get in game as well. So yeah, like I said, I'm going to save this now, zip it up, and then put it into game, and we'll have a look when we get in game. So I will see you shortly once I'm in game. Okay, so here we are in game, and I've just grabbed my Coat Universal trailer here, tanker, whatever you want to call this, and I've already got some water in it, but I'm just going to refill that up anyway all the way. This is actually the smaller water tank, I believe, and if I actually bring up the PDA, you can see here in animals for the cows, like I said earlier on in the video, it does show there the water fill level, and we've only got 4,981, so it did actually remember what water the cows had. So if you do choose to put this particular trough in place of the original one, or if you've given your cows any water previously, I believe it has remembered how much they already had, and it then shows you how much they will actually take. So at the moment they only have 14%, but if you look in the in-game menu, I believe it shows you only what they have, not how much they will take. Yeah, so the PDA mod is quite good for that. It will actually show you how much they will accept. So if you're not entirely sure, you can look at that and go, well, I'm only getting 10,000, so they will take all of it. So if you've only got one tank or whatever, for instance, you know that you're not going to end up with some left in it if you want to use it for something else. So I think that's quite a nice feature of the PDA mod. But okay, so we've now got this particular tanker filled up, so I'm just going to drive over to the cows. Just come in here so I can see what I'm doing a bit better, because it's a bit tight around here. So just come round into the actual cow field here and come over, and we'll come back out so I can see what I'm doing. And I just want to show you the actual pipe connection and everything else. So if I come round to the actual side of the trough, and that's basically what it looks like in all its glory in game. I believe it's R to refill. So if I actually hit R, you can now see that the pipe comes off the back, and there we go, we have our sprayers putting the water in and filling it up. I think that looks really good. I think it adds something to the map. I think it looks more realistic than just dumping water onto the ground. Yeah, so I think it just really adds something to the map and to the game itself. So I will actually just bring up the PDA mod again, so you can see that it has actually accepted. If I actually jump back into this so I can get my cursor up. There we go. So you can now see that we've up to water filled 14,981. So we're still not quite full up, but that's fine. I didn't expect it to, because I only had 10,000. But you can see it went up from what we originally had, 4,000 to 14,000. So it does actually work. It does actually accept the change. So you're not just spraying it in there and making it look pretty. It does actually accept the fill level as part of the game, and I'll just show you in-game menu as well. Water level is now 14,981 as well in there, so it is actually taking effect. So again, like I say, it's not just a trough that looks good, it does actually work as well, thanks to the water mod script. So yeah, there we go. Thanks very much for watching, and I will catch you on the next one.